This is an example of the type of system you could build with Trellinator, which is an automation platform for Trello using Google Apps script. I've just put it here a list called the Internet to simulate how inquiries might arrive. When they do arrive, they're imported from email through Benko Board into the new inquiry list. Anytime a card is added to new inquiry, the new inquiry checklist template is fetched to add to the card, and then Trellinator does a board level notification. It says there's a new inquiry. If the card doesn't have someone assigned to it yet, please click through and take responsibility for it. Now, what does that mean, click through? Well, in my personal Benko board, I've got this notification that says there's a new inquiry. If someone isn't on this card yet, click through and take responsibility for it. And when I click through to that and I add myself, now anyone else who looks at the notification can now see I've already taken responsibility for it and simply archive that notification from their board. Now, because I added myself to that card, I've now got copy in my board, and I can move that around and reprioritize it as required. So you can imagine if we had lots of inquiries, as each person takes responsibility for those things, they now have a copy of these cards on their board, and they can spread them out according to their priorities of which one they're going to deal with first. And that can be reprioritized with all the other emails and tasks and to-dos that they have on. And because I use Benko Board, I can just reply directly from here. And I've done my initial reply. So now I could, for example, check off the first item on my new inquiry checklist. When I finish this checklist, it's going to move the card automatically to the next list and then add the next checklist, which in our case is the sent quote. So whatever I have to do after sending a quote, I can now check this off, and I can also ask someone else on the board, hey, other team member, why is this taking so long to get the materials priced or something? So I can discuss this inquiry with other team members and then reply directly from this card. So as we go through, the quote has been approved, and now when a quote gets approved, we get the quote approved checklist. Now when I complete the quote approved checklist, it's going to move to the next step, but instead of just adding a checklist to the card, it's also going to automatically create a linked production board. Now we've got our production checklist, but in addition to the production checklist, we've got an automatically attached production board for this quote. So now we could have a template board that gets copied for this inquiry. So the production process might be quite complicated. We could replicate the same thing where we have checklist stages for each one of these tasks as it moves through. Each thing could be assigned to a different person, etc., etc. So all the complexity of production can be enclosed within this board. If you can imagine that we have a few different things in the production phase, I might then be responsible for a bunch of different stuff throughout all of those different boards. I'm going to go through to each production board, take responsibility for each of these things, and each time I do that, a card gets created in my inbox linked back to the source one. So I can see what project it's for and what stage it's in. And so I can now reprioritize everything that I'm accountable for across both sales and production. So that's an overview of how the sales and production process can work in Trello, and that entire system that I just showed you is all achieved with these 21 lines of JavaScript code. And all of that code sits inside your Google Drive account. It's owned by your enterprise, so there's no third-party access or anything. It's all inside Google Drive.